Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Go ahead and like this video, share this video. You know what? Just go ahead and follow us on all of our Just So You Know social media platforms. All right, y'all, let's recap, shall we? Last time I told y'all the story of how the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Once researchers understood that these were ancient Hebrew writings, they realized that they had discovered 7 different scrolls. And then I told you about how they found a lot of them to 11 caves with about 1,000 scrolls. And how some of them were made of papyrus or parchment. So get this. One of these scrolls is made of copper.
Few that are written on papyrus as well.
Most of these scrolls are written on parchment. And then I was all like, 38% of these writings were like Jewish theological or religious writings. 27 are various ancient Jewish readings. 11%. We have no idea. 25% are copies of the Hebrew Bible. And after all of that, I was like, but the value of the Dead Sea Scrolls doesn't hit until we start talking about the dating for the scrolls. All hearts and minds clear? Then let's keep it going. Now, when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls, yes, they have an amazing backstory. And yes, there are a lot of them. And yes, they consist of some very interesting types of writings. But the full weight of just how important the Dead Sea Scrolls are does not hit until we talk about the dating for the scrolls. Some of these scrolls date to as early as the 3rd century BCE. While the latest date for some of these scrolls is the 2nd century CE. So the whole dating range for all of the Dead Sea Scrolls is from the 3rd century BCE to the 2nd century CE. Now, y'all remember how I told you the last 25% are copies of the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, with every book accounted for except the book of Esther. Now, I know y'all know where I'm going with this, right?
No, girl. We really don't.
No, girl, we don't.
Okay, listen. If all of the Dead Sea Scrolls fall within a dating range of the 3rd century BCE to the 2nd century CE, then that means that we have copies of the Hebrew Bible that date between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century CE.
Wow. That's so
crazy.
amazing. Oh my gosh.
Right? Because before we had the Dead Sea Scrolls, the earliest copies of the Hebrew Bible, i.e. the Masoretic text, dated to 1000 CE. But with the copies of the Hebrew Bible found from the Dead Sea Scrolls, now we have copies that are at least 1,000 years earlier than the Masoretic text.
It also shows us how accurately and painstakingly the Bible has been copied over thousands of years. So it's 1,000 years difference between them. They match very closely, and there's only very tiny small changes, edits, annotations, whatever it might be. And even then, those have no significant effect or change on historical events or core doctrine for Christians or even for the Jews as well.
I do know, based on being able to read it in Greek and Hebrew, manuscripts that survive, we have a faithful reading, a faithful text, and that's powerful. That the translation of the Bible that we have in English today has stood the test of time and has been verified by the oldest biblical manuscripts to date, which was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Now, I know that's a lot to process, but before we pass the collection plate, there's just one more thing that I wanted to highlight about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And side note, this is for all my extra Bible nerds out there. I don't know if y'all remember, But in the last video, I told you that 38% of these writings were like Jewish theological or religious writings. And because of these scrolls, we get to learn about the ancient Jewish sect that lived right by the Dead Sea Scroll caves at the site known as Qumran.
Now hold up, sis. Hold up. You gonna have to explain to me what a sect is, because I don't know.
Okay.
So a sect is a group of people within a larger, broader group who follow a particular or distinct set of views or beliefs.
Look at it this way. A sect is a lot like a Christian denomination.
We've got AME, we've got Baptist, Kojic, Apostolic, non-denominational, Methodist, Assemblies of God, and on and on and on. Yet all of these fall under the broad group of Christian, but they all follow their own particular or distinct set of views and beliefs.
Anyway, like I was saying, because of these ancient Jewish theological and religious ritual writings, we get to learn about an ancient sect that lived at the site of Qumran.
This is the archaeological site known as Qumran, and this site is situated right next to the Dead Sea Scroll caves. And because this site is right next to the Dead Sea Scroll caves, researchers believe that this is the inhabitants of the religious group connected to the Dead Sea Scrolls.
There are a few theories out there about what type of community or settlement Qumran was, but most would agree actually that it is a site where a Jewish sect lived that lived in a communal way.
Again, these writings date between the 3rd century BCE and the 2nd century CE. And this means that we're looking at yet another sect that was just before and just after Jesus and his disciples come on the scene. And I say yet another because there are various different sects of ancient Judaism at this time. A lot of you Bible students may be familiar with the Jewish sect known as the Pharisees.
They were the ones who were all about keeping rules.
Or the Sadducees.
They were the ones who were all about power and control.
And a few of y'all may know about the Zealots.
They were the ones who were all about being woke and confrontational.
Or the Essenes.
They were the ones who were all about being religiously clean.
Now, the sect of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they refer to themselves as the Yahud.
They were also all about being religiously clean.
Refer to themselves as the Yahad, the community, or the sons of Zadok, B'nai Zadakim, or the priests or the Levites. So they understand themselves as a priestly community.
The fact that this sect was all about being religiously clean has led some scholars to believe that they should be identified with the Essenes.
But honey, we do not have time to get into all that. That's a whole nother video in and of itself. Anyway, this is so important because it helps us to better imagine the very real religious and social world that Jesus and his followers had to navigate. Because it was a world that was very diverse and very complex, which also made it complicated and chaotic at times, which is really not that different from what we navigate today.
Before the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Judaism during the time of Jesus' worldview was thought to have been what rabbinic writings talk about. But that's much later. The Dead Sea Scrolls actually gets us contemporaneous with Jesus. And that's the value of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They remind us that, like today, in the days of Jesus, in the days of the Bible, they weren't monolithic. They didn't believe all the same way.
They do remind us, which a lot of us tend to forget sometimes, is that the Jewish religion and group of people was not just like all made up of one group. They all believed the same thing. You know, there was no disagreements. We all do that.
I mean, so there's all these differences that the Dead Sea Scrolls kind of brings out. And they show you the nuances and some of the tension that's going on with the Jewish groups of the particular time.
Listen to me, y'all. Ancient Judaism, much like Christianity today, did not look one way. We learned this from the biblical texts, we learned this from ancient historians, and now we learn this from the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yes, the Dead Sea Scrolls are important because they really speak to the authenticity of the Bible. They speak to also what the world was like during the time of biblical periods, biblical times. And in that sense, they have value and they speak to what life was like in early Christianity and also kind of the ideology and the theology in the New Testament or the New Testament world, and verifying ideology and theology of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament.
Let me tell y'all, there is so much more that can be said about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, we've only just barely scratched the surface here. So get out there, y'all. Do your own digging and research about the Dead Sea Scrolls. If not for anything else, just so you know.